Hey everybody, this is Robert with RC Archery. Got a video here today for us for how I build my arrows. It's pretty extensive, and a lot of this the normal archer probably isn't going to do, but for me, I want to be able to have full confidence in my equipment whenever I go to shoot, and that's why I build my arrows the way that I do. It's probably more so a OCD thing on my own self, but makes me feel better about the whole process. So what you see me doing right here is I go through and I weigh every shaft that I'm going to use in the batch that I have, so whether that be a dozen or however many, and I mark each shaft and just put the weight on there, and then that's going to help me later on when I go to sort out how I'm going to put my parts and accessories and everything like that, all the components with it, and match everything together to get the closest weight spread possible. So what you'll notice here is I've got all my arrows weighed now, I've got them all marked, and what I'm going to start doing is matching arrows that weighed the same together. So I will pull them together basically just by putting them with one inside the other, and then from there I'll do left to right, everything from lowest weight to highest weight. Now the overall spread on my arrows, really close to begin with. It's only 0.9 of a grain, so less than 1 grain difference between all 12 of these arrows. So that really goes to show the precision that goes into all the Easton products. These are Easton Carbon 1s. They're not super high dollar shafts or anything like the Pro Tours or anything like that, and they're still really accurate, really close together. So what I'm going to do now is take all my points, I'm going to weigh them the same way. So I'm going to lay them out in least to greatest on the weight variances on them, and then be able to match them up to my arrow shafts later on to bring that total weight variance down even more. So you'll notice with all of these, they were all within half of a grain. I only had one on the very low end of the spectrum, and a lot there right in the middle. So that was a good spread and a lot of good precision products you can get from Easton. Now this is a part that I don't always do, so this is weighing knocks, and it's probably getting to where you're splitting hairs at this point, but I decided to do this. I had a couple different sets of packages of knocks. I wanted to weigh them all and just see what they all came out at and be able to match everything up that way through them. So this part I wanted to put in just show overall differences. I went from 0.9 to 0.6 to 0.2, so I got my arrows really close together on weight, virtually no difference at all. So now we want to start with the components. I'm going to take all the arrow points after I've got them matched up. I just wipe them down with rubbing alcohol. That's mainly just to get the machining oils, the greases and everything off of them that come through from the machining process. That's so that the glue it adheres to it better, and I get a better seal in my arrow shaft. I'm also going to take a toolkit that I have from Easton just to prep the arrows. So this one's got a lot of different sizes and a lot of different tools and everything in here, so you can choose from to be able to fit the right arrow shaft that you're using for the time. So now I'm going to go ahead and start installing components. So you'll notice I'm using super glue here. Sometimes I'll use hot melt if I think I'm going to be changing point weights or playing around with that setup, but I know for sure I'm going to use these the way that they are. So I'm going to go ahead and install them with that. So with super glue, you got to make sure that you go ahead and put the arrow point all the way in the shaft and then spin it. So if you try to weigh it or do it separately, as far as spinning it as you're putting it in, a lot of times it's going to hang, it's going to dry beforehand. You're going to end up with a arrow shaft with a point halfway sticking out. So next, once I have all my points installed in the arrows, I'm going to have all my knocks installed as well. I'm going to use the same thing, just rubbing alcohol. I'm going to wipe down the end of the shaft so that I can make sure that the arrow wraps I use are going to get good adhesion. So got some custom arrow wraps there from One Stringer, and basically I use arrow wraps for two things. One, it's much simpler if I ever have to change a vane or anything like that goes on. It's much simpler to just take the arrow wrap off versus having to scrape a vane off, worry about messing a shaft up or anything crazy like that. Another thing too, for whatever reason, I've had better adhesion on the vanes with the wraps. So that's just something that I use as well. Now you'll notice here I have a mark on the pad that I'm using, and this is almost like a mouse pad type material that I have this set on. And I don't put my vanes, or I don't put my arrow wraps rather, at the end of my arrow, because I don't want to have to worry about maybe one of the back of the arrows being hit and not being able to see it crack. So I use a little bit of a space there at the end where there's a bit of a gap that I can tell if there's any damage done to the arrow shaft. Alright, so now we're getting into the fun part. I've got a Last Chance Archery Baitmaster Pro arrow jig that I use. I've used Bitzenberger in the past for a long time now, and finally went over, converted over to the Baitmaster Pro, and I gotta say that it really does make it more convenient. I know the cost to get into one is a lot, but if you look at it, between buying different clamps, if you want to have, you know, straight, left, or right, offset, helical, stuff like that, you're running into almost the same amount of price to just buy the Baitmaster Pro. You're going to be able to get all kinds of adjustments out of this, all kinds of precision, which is really great for me. I get a lot more precision setup on my arrows using this, and if I want to switch back and forth between different helicals, it's really simple. You don't have to worry about dials or setting things into the exact point every time, and worrying if one of the arrows is going to be the same or not. I know I'm going to get the exact same helical on every arrow, and then you can see on the jig here how it works. There's a pin that you move back and forth, and that's all there is to it. So it makes it perfect to have to switch back and forth. Whether you're using little bitty skinny arrows, with a 1 degree offset, or if you're using indoor arrows where you want to put, 4 degree helical on it, however that goes, left and right both, it makes it really easy. For vanes, what I'm using is going to be the Easton vanes, so the type light vanes, the 2-inch length ones rather. That's going to be something new for me to use on these arrows, and really excited to see how it's going to work. It's a good in between from what I've been using in the past with Flex Fletch 187s or 225. So this is going to be an in between, a little bit softer vein. So really curious to see how they perform, long range and the accuracy and what I'll have from it. So here you see me just starting to work on fletching everything, and basically I'm going to put the vanes in there. There is the little black rubber end on there that you'll see. I line all my vanes up with that, basically so I have a consistent starting point for it. You control the spacing on how you want them to be away from the knock by the receiver that you saw me install earlier. I just do a test fit and a dry fit on each one. I want to make sure that the jig here is going to be lined up correctly with the arrow in the center so that I have repeatable consistency with them. Once you have that place on there, it's actually not as easily moved as you would think if you've never messed with one of these before. They're pretty tight on there, so once you have it set, it's not really going to move unless you bump it or move it yourself. So you don't have to worry about inconsistent vane placement. I use a primer pin. This one is a Flex Fletch Zing primer pin. Easton makes a good one. AAE makes a good one too, but I always make sure that I use one of these because basically it just takes any of the manufacturing leftover residue or film or anything that might be on the vanes. It's going to make it really adhere to the arrow shaft really well. So next you'll see here I take the same Loctite Ultra Control Gel or Control Gel, whatever it may be, that I use when I put the points in. I'm going to do the same thing with the arrow vanes. So I just put little drops on the arrow vane along down it. You don't want to put too much on there. Excess doesn't really make it hold more, it just makes more of a mess. So I just put a little bit on there, kind of blend it all together, and then right at the end I'll just turn the tip sideways on that the glue applicator, and then I'll just spread it all out to where it's completely consistent all the way across. At that point it's really simple. You just slide the jig onto the Last Chance Archery Baitmaster Pro and hold there for a few seconds and let the vane adhere to the arrow shaft. So here I've got the final product to look at and everything for us. You're going to notice really even fletching spacing between all vanes. 2-degree left helical that I use. You'll have consistent, spot on helical on each separate vein that you put on. So that's something I really have to praise this Veinmaster Pro for. I don't have to fight it. It makes fletching my arrows a whole lot easier for sure. So I appreciate you watching the video today. Hopefully this will give you some insight on what I do with my arrows and give you an idea on how you can set yours up and get them the most accurate as possible.